Okay, I don't see Naftali. I see live. Where is he? There you are. Hi, Naftali. All right, Moshe, I just see a picture. You, at least I see someone listening. Okay, so we thank Hashem for giving us the modani, the ability to and the opportunity to learn, do our part to help bring Mashiach now. I thank Rabbi Smith for having enough trust in me to give today's shir, and I'd like to dedicate today's shir to the neshama of my brother-in-law who just passed away, unfortunately, Yeshua Abraham ben. Uh, Then, hold on a moment. David Gerson. Okay, and it was just a shloshim for Shimon, forget his whole name, who recently passed away. And obviously for Shlemus, for all those people who need before Shlemus.
Right.
Okay, so a little introduction to today's daf before we start. Today's daf is like the end of the Haggadah, maybe not Lubavitch style, but at the end of because at the end of Haggadah there's this song Echad Miyodea. I don't think Lubavitch say that. Do they say it or not? Somebody tell me. I don't think it's. Naftali, do you say Echad Miyodea?
No, it's not common. We don't say it's not in
Right,
that.
yeah, but it's at the end of the Haggadah. Most other people say it, and it goes numerically. Who knows one? Who knows two? Who knows three? So today's Gemara is very similar to that. It's in numerical order. We're going to discuss items that are mandatory in single, items that are mandatory double, items that are mandatory three. You can go all the way up to 7 or 8, depending how you want to count it. We're going to say why. If you understand this trend of thought, it's all going to come very easy. Why are they mandatory? Well, they're mandatory because of one of two categories. The first is because God said so twice, all right? It's like if a parent says, clean up your room, and the kid doesn't clean up your roam, and then they walk back in, and the room's still a mess, and they say, what they say, clean up your room, right? All right, they're not going to have to come in the third time and say, clean up your room. 2 times you get the message. So a lot of these will say it's just because we'll bring 2 psukim, and that shows why the item is mandatory. Or category number 2, there's specific words that will indicate the fact that this is essential. So whether you want to call it mandatory or essential in English, the Hebrew word is ma'akev, holds it back. What does it mean, holds it back? It means you want this sacrifice to be accepted, etc., etc. You need to have everything in there. And it's very similar to mezuzah and tefillin. The fact is you need the exact every single letter and everything correct, because if it's not going where it's going to go. You want this korban, you want this sacrifice to be accepted, to do what it's supposed to do. You better have it exactly the way it's said, all right? You make a long distance phone call, you have to have the right country code before you start, all right? Whether it's 972 or 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever it is, that number is essential. You don't dial that number, you get Mumbai. I don't know where you get Uganda. You get some other place, Canada, but you may not get exactly where you want. So it's more than the area code. So that's the whole theme of today. So now let's start. Hakometz miyuto makiv es rubo. All right, this is the language that they'll use. So here we're starting off with kamitza, all right? That its smaller part is essential to its larger part. What does that mean? The amount that's in here, that's the kamitza. If you're missing a little bit of it, which quote unquote is the term, its smaller part, if that's missing, well, guess what? That's essential to the larger part, meaning the rest of the kamitza is not good. So you can't have a deficiency in Kamitza and expect that Kamitza will still be good. And what is it good for? You need the Kamitza in order for the Mincha to be accepted, just like you need the Zrika in order for the animal sacrifice to be accepted. All right, next one. Isarim Yotomake Vesrubo. The Isarim of flour. Its smaller part is essential to its larger part. Again, Isaran is, I think we said a tenth of an aphor at some point or something like that. But there's a certain amount of flour you need. If you don't have that amount of flour to dump in the bowl and add the oil and then do the kamitza, guess what? It's no good. Again, you need a certain amount. Now, at this point, the Gemara is not explaining. We're reading the Mishnah. Why is it or how is it that we learn that you need it, that it's essential? All right? But, Naftali, I like your vest, by the way. Is that a remnant of motorcycle days, I think? Right? No, just Stam Azaya vest. Okay.
Bicycling.
Bicycling. Okay. You know my famous vest story. Like 40 years ago, I went into whatever the House of Leather, I forget the name of that, Wilson's House of Leather in California. I was there for a week for a seminar, and it was freezing. I didn't have a winter jacket, and I wanted to buy some, and they're showing me all the leather jackets, and they're so expensive. I mean, this one's $400, this one's $300, and finally, I say, you have anything cheaper than $300? And they show me the same leather jacket without its sleeves, just a vest. And they say, well, this you can have for $200. I said, keep the sleeves. I'll take the vest. And to this day, I still have my leather vest. Okay, my kids love my leather vest. Okay, it has nothing to do with today's. The sleeves were not my cave buying the jacket. That's about the only connection. Okay. Hayayin Yutumake Visrubo. Okay, the Nisachim that require wine libations, again, if we're missing the certain amount of required wine, that's essential, meaning therefore it's ma'akev. Again, ma'akev means it holds it back. And in English, when we say essential, we're looking at it from the other side of the coin, but it's mandatory. You must have the complete amount. Hashem and Muto Ma'akevis Rubo, same thing with oil when it's required, like, for example, oil by the Mitzvah. Hasolas for Hashem Makvin Zeza. Now we're going to jump a category in the Mishnah where two items are required together, and if you're missing one of the two, then the other one is no good, the remainder. So again, in counting, we went from the ones, now we're going to the twos, or part one of the twos, all right? So where you require solas and mincha, fine flour and oil in a certain mincha, which is most of the minchas, then if you're missing one without the other, it's no good. Hakomitz Falavana, Makvin says, same thing for the kamitza and the frankincense. You require each of them. If one is missing and not the other, it's no good. Now the Gemara can explain all this. All right. So the Gemara starts off, my timer. What's the reason that even if a little part is missing, all right, that the rest is no good? In other words, that it's essential for the effectiveness or the acceptance, or let's put it like this, going back to the telephone. Why is it that if you leave out the country code, it's not, the message ain't going where it's supposed to go? All right. So it's kind of here. Why is it that if you're missing something a little bit, it's not going to be accepted? It's not going to do whatever it's supposed to do. So it says Amar Kra. So it says in the pasuk in the Torah, Melo kumtso trei zimnei. So the verse states the full commits twice. And this is what I mentioned before. Part A is that if a pasuk is, in other words, if it's mentioned twice in two psukim, in two sentences, that's sending you a strong message. Soldier, what did I say? Attention. You don't wait for a second. If you hear something twice, that's what it is. No questions asked. Rubo. How do I know the same thing regarding the Isurim? It says Amakra Misalta. So there in the pasuk it says from its fine flour. So the extra hey Misalta, all right, teaches us Sheim Chasra Koshu Psula, that even if a little bit of it is missing, all right, it's missing the amount. So that's an example, not that it's said twice, but just the way the word is said. Because we'll show examples of where it says Chok Olam, this is the law of the land, the eternal law. All right, Chukah. It's Chok, there's no questions about it. Okay. All right. How do we know when it comes to wine? The same thing, that if you're missing anything, that itself is essential, and therefore that negates it's mandatory, and it's not going to work because the word there is used kacha. Okay, this is the way it should be, kacha. All right. Hashem mutamakivus rubo. Same thing. How do we know it by oil? Also, the minchas nesachim kacha, because by minchas nesachim, the type of mincha, it also uses the words kacha. This is the way. Minchas nedava makra umishamna. And by a mincha of a voluntary mincha nedava, how do we know? Because it says mishamna, again, like a hay, like we said before, saying specifically from its oil. Shim chasa koshu psula. That if a minute amount is missing, it's invalid. You know, a little crack in the mezuzah, a mezuzah is not kosher. A letter is missing in the Torah, Moshe knows. Torah is not kosher until you have to wrap it up and to fix it. Okay, Hashem, and not all of these are fixable. All right, and that was a separate machlokes, which I think we're going to mention, but we learned previously, like if you're missing flour, can you go home, get the missing flour, put it in? There was a machlokes depending whether or not you had done the kamitza way or you didn't do the kamitza, etc., etc. All right, Hashem v'asolos makim zeh. Okay, now again, we're talking about two items together. Oil and fine flour are essential for each other. And why do we know that they're essential for each other, not just essential for themselves, each part? And again, we're going to mention from the pasuk, we actually mentioned this earlier, misalta umishmana, from its fine flour and from its oil, and the phrase migersha mishamna, and its fine ground barley flour and from its oil. All right, the first one refers to wheat flour, which is usually used for most menachas, and the second one is referring gersha from barley flour, which is only by sota. And the omer. That's when it's brought in. Since the Torah repeat, the requirement teaches that both are critical for the validity of the mincha. Everyone's with me? Yeah, Naftali, we good? Good. Okay. Hakamets for Lavan and Makvin says zeh. The ruling that the Komets and Lavan are essential to each other. How do we know that? Komets and the Lavana. Again, this is a second case of two items, both required. Each one requires the other. Lavana sa. Good morning. He shall take a komets from there, in addition to which Lavana. There's ko halavana asher mincha, and all the lavana that is on the mincha. Here, too, the repetition indicates essentiality. All right, so let me just review for a moment, because somebody just came in late. All right, the Gemara, the Mishnah, and the Gemara are mentioning how all these items that we've been talking about till now, the kamitza and the pouring of the oil and wine libations, all these things, that if you're missing a little bit of the shear, it's no good. An analogy, think of it, you're missing the country code, making a phone call, or you're missing a crack or a letter in the mezuzah not kosher. It's not going to go to where it's supposed to go. The korban is not going to be good. The sacrifice is not going to be good. And we've given the reasons for this as either because the Torah states the item twice. It's like very mandatory. Look, I told you this. All right, you know this is the way it has to be. Or certain words were used that show that this is the way it has to be. And we're going to do this further, all right? And it's also going numerical order. So we start off with single items. We went to now items that are double, two different things. One requires the other as well. And we brought sentences from where. So that was a summary up to this point. Okay, now, Shnei Srim, Yom Kippur, and Makman says, now we're in the twos. The two he-goats of Yom Kippur, they're essential to each other. So what does that mean? It means if the Kohen Gadol shows up with only one seir, one he-goat, uh, he can't do that korban. It's not going to work. You need two, right? Shnei kivsei atzeres makim zedza. The two lambs of shuas, also, you need them both. Shtei chalas makvas zoazo. The two loaves of shuas are essential one for each other. You can't do one loaf without the other loaf. You can't say, well, I only had one. I bought one. Guess what? That ain't going to fly. It's not going to work. Ain't going to Peoria. Shnei Sidorin Makvin says the two arrangements of the Lechem Apanim are essential to each other. All right? That's important. All right? Lechem Apanim, right? This is in the Kodesh. All right? We've got, the showbread table, the menorah, and the gold, the incense sacrifice table, whatever it's called. If the showbreads, which are a set of six and a set of six, with the two lavonas, the frankincense called the bazichin in between. What if you're missing six and you only have six? Well, why don't we go back in the early 1900s? Packard came out with a 12-cylinder engine. All right, they did. Early Packard had a 12 cylinders. I always think back in the 50s, the first car I had, it was a straight six. I didn't know 4 years before they actually had 12 cylinders. Now, I'll tell you, the second car or third car I ever owned was an Alfa Romeo with only 4 cylinders. But when coming down to Florida, I just got married with my wife. We bought it. 1.5 cylinders kind of blew out. We still drove down on 2.5 cylinders. All right, it wasn't ma'akev. All right, and we got great gas mileage. But when it comes to a korban, you need it just this way. All right. By the way, as long as I mentioned 12 cylinders, and because Naftali's looking at me like, whoa, because I mentioned, vehicles. It wasn't until the 60s that Cadillac actually took the concept of 12 cylinders and made it into a V12. Because the next step up after the straight six was the V8, 4 on each side. But Cadillac actually experimented with the V12, where he put 6 on each side. But the original one back in the Packard was 12 in a row. All right, and I know who. Now there are there's V20 engines. They're used in diesels and I think airplanes or something, this and that. So I mean, who knows what AI is going to do in the future. Anyway. Shnei Sidorim, but they can make more korbanos for us. This is the law of the land, the law of God, the eternal law. Shnei Sidorim. What?
I was around one of these, I think it was a 16-cylinder Cadillac from the 30s. You could put your head and your ear on the hood and still not hear the engine running.
Wow, because it's a Cadillac.
Yeah,
ain't claiming. The only way that works now is if it's electric. Then, so what did they do? You notice they have music so that the car is moving, especially in reverse. Because I go out in the parking lot here and I'm always hearing music because so many people have EVs here. And I'm looking, where's this music coming from? It's not a cell phone. It's they're backing up their EVs and it plays a certain musical tone. Okay, Shnei Stir. By the way, were you able to sync that video with this one? You tell me later. Shnei Stir Mak says up. The two arrangements of Lechem Panim, one is essential to the other. The two spoonfuls, the vazichin of the frankincense that were in between this Lechem Panim, where they were one on top of each other, or one like in front of each other, lengthwise or whatever, or actually widthwise between the two stacks of 6. They're essential. You can't just have one vazichin. All right, so if the Kohanim came in, the whole set of them, the 4, I think it was 8 Kohanim, and they were going to make the switcheroonie, and all of a sudden they find out that when the first two were taking the two vazichen off, whoops, there's only one vazichen. Guess what? That's no good. Or if they're coming in and they're missing one guy says, sorry, dropped another way, it's not going to work. Okay. Hasidorim vazichen makim zeh. So the arrangements of Relechem upon him and the spoonfuls of Levana also essential to each other. Shnei minim shebenazir. Two types of bread offerings by a nazir. All right, when the nazir finally gets to be unnazired, all right, after 30 days, he gets his head shaved. This aid brings certain korbanos, so he has to bring two types of breads. two types. I think he brings elaborate, but it's two types.
20.
Now we've done the twos. Now we're up to the threes. All right. The three components of the service of the red cow. All right. When it came to the paraduma, all right, which was outside of the Beis HaMikdash, they had three items over there, and they needed all three to go sprinkled. After they slaughtered the blood, they'd sprinkle the blood over, over the paraduma towards facing the Beis HaMikdash. All right, now we're up to four. Again, now we're just listing items, starting from 1 to 2 to 3. As I say, we're going up the list. Abba Shablulav, the 4 species of the lulav. You need all 4 species. Can't do it with just 3 species. Abba Shibmitzara, and the 4 components of the Mitzvah's purification. So it comes to Mitzvah, he also brings 3 things similar to the 3 that we just mentioned by the Paraduma. Plus, I think he brings 2 birds. Anyway, you can look it up. Shiva Azat, Shiva Para, Makvad Zuwitzel. The 7 sprinklings of the red cow are essential to each other. Okay, so we mentioned there were 3 items used for the sprinkling, but he has to sprinkle it 7 times. Sheva, and speaking about 7, we're up to 7 already. Sheva Zayashal Bein Habadim. When we're talking in Yom Kippur, and the Kohen Agado is in Kodesh Kadoshim, in the Holy of Holies, and he's literally standing between the poles that are coming out of the Aron. He has to sprinkle it 7 times. And we say that, remember, achas, v'shtayim, achas, right? Achas, v'shiv, right, 7 times. So it's, and he goes up and then he goes down, up and then down, yeah. So you might say it's 8, but it's really 7 drops going down, right? Sha'ala parachas, then he has to sprinkle sprinklings on the parachas itself, okay? That's the current that divides the Kodesh Kodashim from the Kodesh, all right? And then he has to sprinkle it on the gold altar, which is where the spices are. Makvazu. So these are essential, this to the other, and I believe what they're saying here is not the 3 different things we've mentioned. One is essential to the other, but in each case, all the sprinklings are. This is how what I think it means. If you happen to see something else in there, let me know. That, like, let's say you only did 6 sprinklings to Kohen Gadol, and then he goes to do the next set. Guess what? He messed up the first set. You need all 7 sprinklings. All right. I think that's what it means. Let me see. It's mixed together. What?
That's what it says.
Okay, so we're good. We'll make sure I'm not telling you the wrong thing. All right, now we're up to the Gemara. Shnei. At least we're moving. All right. Shnei. I'm losing my voice though.
So it's 7 sprinklings on between the poles, and 7 on the brochus, and 7 on the gold.
Right. Yes, that's how I understand.
Essentially.
Shnei Shim Yom Kippur Makvin says. So now the Gemara can explain the ruling that he goes to Yom Kippur essential to each other. Chukah. How do we know that? Because it's a chok. All right. It says, if you look in the pasuk in Vayikra, it says, "V'hayasazos lachem lechukas olam." This shall be for you an eternal decree. So chukas olam in English is eternal decree. So when the Gemara says chukah, all right, they're referring to this chok olam, or that's the law, period. Okay.
Is this gonna follow before when I said that it said hookah, like we didn't need anything else? But I think if it said Torah,
Before we gave an example, just it was a prologue. Now the Gemara is discussing exactly the sources of where everything came from. At the beginning, I said that this. How do we know? We know either things are said double or the specific words, and I gave examples. Chok, this, that, the extra hey, this, that. Now we're going in detail in each one. Got it. Okay. The two lambs of Shavuos. Again, we mentioned this before. How do we know that? It comes from the word Havaya. Now, it's not that it says Havaya, it says Yihiyu. All right? These things should be for God. All right? But Yihiyu is the same letters of Havaya, meaning presently. All right? That it's here and now. You need to have all of these. The two chalas havaya, again, the two loaves are also from the term havaya. Shtei sidurim chuka. Now we're just listening, and we went back. Now the Gemara's going back, starting from 1 and 2. Shtei sidurim chuka. The two arrangements of lechem apanim. All right, even though each is 6, but again, it's like the V12. 6 on one side, 6 on the other side. The later model V12. You need that. How do we know? Because it's also chukah. Because it says Mishay Hashem Chok Olam. All right. So every time the Gemara says the word chukah, they're referring to in the Torah where it says Chok Olam, the eternal law. There's no water around here, is there? Don't go get it, but you don't see it. All right, don't worry. Shnei bezichim chuka, 2 spoonfuls of levana. How do we know that? Once again, from chuka, it says chok olam. Hastarin babezichim chuka. How do we know that the arrangements of the lechem apanim and the spoonfuls are essential each to each other? Now we've jumped a category up where we have a pair of items. In this case, one of the pair actually is a pair in itself. It's the set of 2 6s, all right? And the other part of the pair is also a pair in itself, the 2 levanas. But what we're saying here is the breads. And, oh, thanks. Just get pour me some water. Yeah, just pour it into this. Thank you. I don't know what we do here without Hillel. He is the electronics man. What's it called? And he also brings water. Just don't mix the water with the electronics together. I think your phone will go. It's really. I said bracha before on my hot chocolate, so I'm not saying it on the water here. Thank you. So that was very interesting because we brought a pair, but up until now, when we've mentioned pairs, it's a single item and another single item. Here, what's interesting is one part of the pair is actually a set of 6s, the showbreads, and the other part of the pair is a pair of frankincense, the vazichin. But the 2 sets together make its own pair, and you need both of them. Now, the next set, Shnei Minim Shebenazir, the 2 types of bread offered by the Nazir are essential to each other. And here we have a new word that says Kain Ya'aseh. This is how he should do it. The pasuk it says in Bamimba, Zos Toras HaNazir Asher Yidur, blah blah blah, Korbanot Hashem Kain Ya'aseh. This is how he should do it. All right. So again, when there's this kind of didactic in the Torah that says, hey, this is how it should be, whatever words it's using, Chok Olam, Ken Yaseh, Yihiyu, this and that, that's one proof. The other is when the Torah goes and brings a second sentence repeating the same item. Now moving up, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, what's 4? Arba Shabbat Torah. 4 types of the Torah offering essential to each other. I think that's 4 lambs or whatever. The iskish lenazia. Since the bread of the Torah is compared to the scripture to the bread of the Nazir, dichtiv, al zevach Torah shlomav, as written regarding the bread of the Torah, in addition to the sacrifice of his Torah shlomim offerings. Let me see what the exact pasuk is. And the pasuk is al chalos lechem chametz, with loaves of leavened bread shall he bring his offering. Yaakov Kobano, Al Zevach Toda Shlomov, with his feast thanksgiving peace offering. Oh, whoops. Okay, just lost it. My Gemara did one of those funny jumps. Help me.
It's not here.
No, it's stuck in the pasuk that I brought. Oh, I hate when this happens. Okay, time out 1 second. You know, I hit it for pasuk. I'm stuck in now the Chumash, trying to get out of the Chumash. All right. Oh, come on, stop this. Sorry, I'm sorry. Bear with. Here's the one. Give me a. Sorry about that. You can play with that.
No.
Where are we up to in here?
Oh, you were discussing the 4.
Okay. Baba Shabbatorah, that was the last thing I said. And the 4 components of the Mitzvah, send it to each other. Because this should be law of Mitzvah. All right, now we're up to Lulav. We're still in the 4th. So we know you need 4 species of Lulav. How do we know it's 4? He says that you need all 4. It's because to take in the word ulakach tem is ulakach tom. All right, you should take for yourselves a complete taking. Tam is complete, like tam yel Hashem Elokechem. All right, so it's a play on the words almost, but we're not playing. I mean, lakach tem means you need all 4. Amarav Chanaba. Okay, now we're going to learn a little bit about the 4 minim, whether or not they need to be all bound together, or you can just hold them together. It's a machlokas, and the fact that you basically need all 4. Loshan amarav chanaba rabba loshano ela she'ein lo aval yesh lo. Wait, they only taught that the 4 species is essential to each other when he doesn't have all 4 species. It's kind of funny. If you don't have them, in other words, you have only 3, guess what? You can't do it. You have only 3 of the species. You don't have an esrog. You need all 4 of our yeshlo. But what if you have all 4? Here's where the machlokas is. He has all 4, but he hasn't taken them into one bundle. In other words, he hasn't tied them all together, right? He has fulfilled his requirement. It's not essential that they be taken into one bundle. And then there's a long commentary on this because I think it's a machlokas. Anyway, Mesfei, let's go further. They challenge this from a brisa. Arba minim shebelulav. Regarding the 4 species of the lulav. Shnei mehen osim peros. We know 2 of them have fruit. What's that? The esrog has fruit, and the date palm, the lulav itself, it has fruit. All right, palm trees. Ushnami and enos in Paris, and the other 2, the hadosim and ravas, they don't bear any fruit. Us in Paris use the cooking she'ein osim. Those that bear fruit require those that don't bear fruit. Oh, it's like kol yisrael revim zebazeh. We all require each other. She'enos in Paris use the cooking, los in Paris, and the ones that don't bear fruit require the ones that do bear fruit. It's kind of like the guys that go around asking for tzedakah. Who's doing the mitzvah here? Are you doing the mitzvah and shul giving them the dollar tzedakah or whatever amount? Or are they doing the mitzvah, giving you the chance for you to mekayem giving tzedakah? Because if no one was around collecting, well, in this case, if we want to draw an analogy, you're both doing a mitzvah. She'enos in Paris use the cooking laws in Paris. Ve'en adam yetzidei chavaso b'hen, and one doesn't fulfill his obligation for them. Af you kulam ba'agudas achas. And so according to this, you have to have them all tied in one bundle. It's interesting. Here's the word aguda. Is that the same way they spell aguda, like agudas Yisrael, Naphtali with an aleph? All right, so maybe that's where aguda comes from. You know, the unification, the all Israel together. You know, and that's by the way, when we say the shlich tzibor. All right, what does tzibor mean? So anybody know offhand or recall? Tzibor
Tzadik,
right,
Benoni, Russia.
right. Tzadik Beinonim Russia. Yeah, I knew the answer. I want to see if anyone else did. You passed. All right.
By the way, the Cadillac was a 16-cylinder, not a 12.
Was a 60? They experimented in the 60s with a 12, I thought. But I don't think they came out with it. You're right. When they finally came out, it was a 16 because they essentially used the V8 concept and just kind of made two V8s in a straight line together.
It took them forever to get the VA right.
You know what he wants. You know, even with the tomato soup, tomato drink, it took a while. The Chen Yisrael Bar Hartza. Yeah, I never understood why people would be drinking these V8s in the morning. You know, I'd see that until I found out that they were putting the vodka in it, and that's where they were having morning after drink in the V8. That was a little cocktail. But I didn't know that. I was so dumb because I don't drink. I know what people always having tomato juice in the morning some places. Okay, the Chen Yisrael Bar Hartza, and so too the Jewish people beseech appeasement. They are not answered ad shiyu kulan biagudas achas until they're all united as one group. This is so important. You know, in our neighborhood here, I don't know, we must have more than a dozen synagogues and kollels, probably maybe 16 already. You know, I wonder if everyone realized we're davening to the same God. You know, I mean, because you go in someplace, you think like it's a totally different place and this and that, you know, but we're all in North Miami Beach, or at least the donut hole, which is, you know, whether it's unincorporated date and NMB, whatever, we're all here together. Agudas Achas. You change the name of this neighborhood to Aguda, but if we do that, Anash will complain, so I'll be Anash Aguda. All right. Just, I don't know. Let's get back to normalcy. Shenamwa, Abona b'Shemaim ba'aloso ba'aguda so al eretz yisada. I love this pasuk, as it says, who built his upper strata in the heavens and founded his group upon the earth. We thus see that it is essential that all species of the lulav be tied together, which contradicts Rav Chana bar Rava. There was a question mark because he said you didn't have to tie it. So how do we resolve this difficulty? Tanahi. It's a dispute amongst Tanam whether or not the species must be tied. This is kind of a digression for a moment. We already said that all four are needed. So now we're just digressing, talking about whether or not they have to be tied together or not. The Sanya, so in the Brisa, lulav bein agud bein sheno agud kosher. The lulav and its related species, whether they're bundled or not, they're valid. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says agud kosher. Rabbi Yehuda says they have to be bound together. Sheno agud pasul. But if they're not bound together, it's invalid. Thus, the difficulty is resolved. Rav Chanan bar Abba holds like the Tanakama. Species don't have to be tied together, while the Brisa cited requires that the species to be tied follows the view of Rabbi Yehuda. So that's how it said at the beginning, it's a machlokes, because as Rabbi Learfield, rest in peace, always said, it's a machlokes. All right, the Gemara explores the source of Rabbi Yehuda's requirement that the species be tied in a bundle. It's interesting. This is a really ADHD. I mean, we're really going off now, this whole explanation in just discussing now more about the tied in the bundle. All right. My time at the Rabbi Yehuda. What's Rabbi Yehuda's reason? Kama kicha ma'agudas Esav. All right. So he learns it. The case of lulav from a Gezerah Shav from the case of in the Pesach service, all right, when they had to put blood on the inner posts of their house, right? Not the outer post as is depicted in magazines or movies. The blood wasn't on the outer post. God knew where the Jews were living. It was on the inner post where the Jews were inside doing their Seder to remind them what's going on and the God's passing over, right? So they had to have like 3 items that they tied together and then dipped in the blood and used it. So it says or whatever it was, in the case of the hyssop, all right, that the Jews used in Pesach, regarding which Hashem commanded you take a bundle of hyssop. So they made a bundle of it. Malahanim baguda, just like there it said tied in the bundle, and they used the word lakach, to take. So since the same word lakach, all right, or vayikach is used here by the 4 species, Afkan Baguda, it should also be taken in the bundle. But Rabbana lo gami kicha kicha. But Rabbanan don't learn this hekesh from the word to take, used in each place. Therefore, they don't have the tradition to expand the Gezerah Shava of taking. All right. Having mentioned the dispute regarding the bundle of lulav, the Gemara analyzes a related brisa. Oh, boy, now we're really going off another degree of ADHD. Kaman Azla Hadatanya, whose opinion is reflected in the following brisa. Lulav mitzvah lo It's a mitzvah to bundle the lulav with the other species. Vim lo agad kosher. And if he didn't bundle it, it's still kosher. All right, so we're almost at the bottom of 27A. Oh man, we didn't get to 27B. If we're not bundle it, come on, whose opinion is it? Rabbi Yehuda. If you want to say it's according to Rabbi Yehuda, lo gado on my kasha. Then in the case where one did not bundle it, why is it valid? Rabbanan. And if we're saying it's according to Rabbanan, my mitzvah, what mitzvah is it to bundle it at all? The Gemara answers, le'alam Rabbanan. Actually, it's in accordance with the Rabbanan. Or my mitzvah, and what's the mitzvah to bundle it? Mishum zeh because it says, this is my God and I shall glorify him. So how do I glorify him? I guess by bundling it together. Gemara resume, citing the sources for the laws of our Mishnah. Okay, now we're finally getting back. Come back into the room. We're going back to the numbers. We're up to 4, but somehow we're jumping up to 7. 7, Sheva Hazor Shebapara Makva Zu. The 7 sprinklings of the red cow. Right before we mentioned 7 sprinklings that had to do in the Kodesh Kadoshim, and the and the Kodesh and the Heichal. All right, but here they also did 7 sprinkles on the red heifer. All right, facing towards the Beis Hamikdash. All right, Chukah is derived. It says there Chukah is derived from the term Chukah. All right. The Gemara cites the concluding words of the Mishnah. Sheva Zah Shal Bein Habadim, the 7 sprinklings between the poles of the ark, Shal Misbach HaZahav, and the 7 on the altar. This is, Professor, what you mentioned before, 777. The Shal Parachas, and on the curtain, Makva Zu Zu are essential to each other. So not only are the 7 required for each one, it appears here that all 3 are required, and maybe if you left out one, the other. I asked this question earlier, and I'm not sure where the answer is, but it sounds like you need the whole set of 3. The Gemara cites the sources for the essentiality of each of these sprinklings. The Yom Kippurim Ksiv Chukah, regarding the sprinklings of Yom Kippur, that is between the poles of the ark, the golden altar, and the parachas. It is written chukah. Okay, we said every time it says chukah, it's in the Torah Chakolam. I don't have it over here, but I think I don't have that hyperlink. The Par Kohen Mashuach, regarding the sprinklings of the parachas of the bull anointed Kohen, Udvar Ha'elam Davar Zeh Shoatzibor. And of the bull of the atonement of a communal error, Desire avodas kochavim, and the he-goats that atone for the inverted communal idolatry to sources, Tanya, as was taught in the Brisa, Vasala par kashir sala par. When the verse states regarding the bull of atonement for communal error, he shall do to the pull of the chatas for communal error as he did to the pull of the chatas of the anointed Kohen. My Talmud Lomar was come to teach it comes to repeat the requirement of performing its prescribed sprinklings. All right, the top of 27b. Still have 10 minutes. This tells us that even if he omitted even one of the blood applications, he's accomplished nothing for the avoda. All right, he's failed to affect atonement. Tan Rabbana. And again, what's interesting, if you just read the sentences, you still don't really know. Are they talking about that specific atonement if I'm missing one of the sprinklings, or am I talking about all three atonements? In other words, if I'm missing the sprinklings from one, or all three not right? And again, I'm not sure where the answer is. It's probably in Rashi or somewhere, but I had it before. I just don't remember. I think you need all three. Do you remember? Did you read this ahead, or anybody? Okay. Tan Rabbanan. What?
They don't have that.
Okay. We'll come across the answer somewhere. The rabbis taught in the Brisa, Sheva Zah Shebapara, 7 sprinklings of the red cow. Now we're going back to the Paraduma, which is outside of the Beis Hamikdash, and he's sprinkling it facing Beis Hamikdash. Shah son, Bein Shalo Lishman, Bein Shalo Mechuvanas. All right. Psulas. When is it puzzled? So what's the requirements there? Now we're not talking, before we were talking about things which if part was missing, the essentiality was gone and therefore it didn't count, like the crack in the mezuzah or the country code. Now we're talking about the fact that you need to have kavanah, which is intention, lishma, what the Kohen was doing, and you also had to have your compass, mechab in your direction. You had to be facing. It appears initially the entrance to the Beis Hamikdash. So you had to be facing north, south, east. So you're facing westward because you're facing the east entrance, and then straight through into the Kodesh Kadoshim. All right, or not directed. Okay, so if you're not directed toward the entrance of the sanctuary, psulos, it's invalid. The shebifnim u'shebimitzora, and the sprinklings that are performed inside the sanctuary, all right, are the set, and those of the oil of the offerings of mitzora, shelo lishman psulos. If those also the Kohen did not sprinkle with the correct kavana, meaning lishma, the intention of doing it, it's also like the opposite of pigul. All right, but it's not that he didn't. He had the intention to be thinking somewhere else. He's just not thinking. All right, he didn't have the kavana. What he's doing, shalom mechuvanas ksheras. So it says, but if it's not mechuvanas, if they're not directed towards the entrance sanctuary, they're still valid. So here on the inside, we're saying if he didn't have the correct mental intention, lishma, for the sake of mitzvah, it's possible. But if he wasn't facing the right direction when he's inside there in the Beis Hamikdash in Echo, it's still okay. So we'll have to see what's the difference there from the Paraduma, which was outside of the Beis Hamikdash, and we originally thought that the Kohen has to be sprinkling and facing it towards the Beis Hamikdash. The Gemara poses a contradiction from a different brisa. Vatanya Gabi Para. It was taught otherwise in the brisa regarding the red cow, Paraduma, red heifer. Shalo lishman psulas. If the sprinklings were not performed for lishma, for their own sake, apostle. Shalo mechavanas ksheras. So over there, it was taught in that brisa. If it wasn't pointing to the right direction, they're still valid. So this brisa is different from what we said before. All right. Before we said you needed both. The lishma the mental intention, and as well as the direction. All right. This clearly contradicts the Brisa previously. So, by the way, I don't know if you guys have this. I daven Shemona Esrei sometimes from my smartphone, and when I'm starting the beginning of Shemona Esrei, all of a sudden a little direction arrow shows up in the right lower hand corner and points and then disappears. At the beginning, I didn't know what it was. It's showing me where east is. So I don't know. It's somewhere in the software. I thought that was pretty cool. Anyway, this clearly contradicts the Brises previously cited, which invalidates the offering if the springs were not directed towards the entrance of the sanctuary. So that's the question. We bring a Brisa now. Seems to contradict what we said before. The Gemara resolves the contradiction. So how do we resolve it? I'm sorry, I'm going to have to end here. Amar Rav Chisda said lo kasha, doesn't present a difficulty. Harav Yehuda, Harabanan, because this is the machlokes Rav Yehuda and Rabbanan. The Tanya, because it was learned in the Brisa, or Mechusa Srei Kapara. We'll have to continue from the Tanu Rabbanan tomorrow. And I'm sorry I did prepare this, so just in the event for some reason the rabbi doesn't make it tomorrow, I'm okay for 27b. But Rabbi, you better come if you're listening. Okay, thank you all for listening. I got to
Thank
go.
you. Have a great day.
See you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good day.
Bye.
Oh.